Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about leadership. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, would you say that leadership skills are important for a senior slash staff engineer? Yes, I would say it would depends a little bit on what, because there are like new ranks of seniority, as I've said 100 times, guys. You've used the senior term so much now that we don't have like it doesn't mean what it used to mean anymore. Now we have staff engineer and principal engineer, and we have ranks of that too. Like it's just we're coming up with a whole new way of, well, I wouldn't say a whole new way. It's just basically it's basic inflation. This thing that used to mean you know everything is now just means that yeah, you've worked for a certain amount of years, because it's what people usually do. They hijack the term, and it starts diluting its value. And so a staff engineer is usually higher up, depending on how you look at it, versus a senior software engineer these days, at least from what I can see. It's not always the case, but as I said, these terms are a little bit ambiguous. So it's hard to say this or that about it. But if we're talking about an individual who is like at the higher levels of a software company, then yes, leadership skills are going to be more important. So a trend that you will start seeing now, or it's been going on for some while, is that most companies are trying to create a career ladder of some sort. Now, because the realizations that most companies in IT have had is that the traditional, like the classic career progress that you see within most companies, which is that you start as a worker and you work yourself up to a management level, is not so healthy for the IT companies these days, because basically what that means is that you will not provide technically gifted people who want to focus on the engineering with any reason to stay within your company, which is bad for you. And it's also not great if everybody's turned into a manager, because you're losing technical people, which is, as I like to say, it's like the raw material of everything. If you don't like everything, your entire IT business, it's like, it's like the raw, it's like a furniture factory not having any wood, or like a mine, like not having metal for iron work or making steel or stuff like that. Like it's the minds of your engineers. This is the raw material, right? So if you're trading that for management people at all levels, you're going to lose your resources. Because it's very difficult it's a very, very scarce resource, and it's very difficult to replace very gifted software engineers. And so the thing that usually happens now, though, is that companies have started to realize that we can't just have technically gifted, because that doesn't work either. You can't just endlessly add more levels and have people only focus on the coding. Because at some point, as I've said before, guys, even the world's most gifted software engineer will reach a physical limit where you can no longer actually produce more value as a single individual. You have to scale things, and that's what management wants usually. They usually want the most gifted software developers to take on more of an overarching responsibility and start leading other software developers to train more less experienced people, or to take on roles which are extremely difficult, where like there's a term that they gave me this, for example, like not that long ago. It's called a quote unquote technical product manager, and that basically means that the product that I took over, like the responsibilities that I took over, is so now my role is like a hybrid between, like, I basically do all the coding, but I also do the entire roadmap and like set the future of the project and do all the product meetings and stuff like that. And the reason or the motivation behind it was that the management realized that like we can't put a regular product manager on this, because in order for you to be effective at this, you have to have a fairly technical understanding of what you're doing, and you also have to have it, because it's a product that is consumed by other developers as well, which means that if you don't know the struggle, so to speak, of the software developers, you don't really know how to fix anything, so you're going to be very ineffective at it. This becomes more and more common, where you, as a software developer, the more experience you get, the more you realize that you're going a little bit like you're moving slightly from just coding on stories to basically leading other coders. You're still a software developer. You still, like, I mean, I still do tons of coding every single day, but my responsibilities is not just to do the coding. It's also about coaching people, showing them like things that, you know, a little bit like what we're doing here on my little channel here, where, you know, I've done a lot of stuff, and so my role is not just to sit in my own corner and just code away. It's also about sharing what I know and sharing my perspective, because that perspective usually has some experience behind it, which usually benefits the overall, like the education of people who may not have been doing it for as long, or so forth and so forth. And this is something that actually these career ladders starts to incorporate. More and more of them are going to be like, the higher up you get, the wider your skill set will be, like that, the wider the requirements will be. You will find that you will only get so far on pure coding skills, and then further up they're going to ask you to run initiatives, have good relationship with certain stakeholders, etc., etc. So you might not turn into a pure manager anymore, but your leadership skills are going to be a factor in how far up the ladder you can get. And of course, you don't have to get to the highest levels. You can stay with just the coding, but in many cases you won't be able to get to like the really high salary brackets or the top levels within an IT company without any leadership, because as I said, basically any company will want, basically all of them at the very least, will want you to be able to scale yourself in some fashion. And that's, I think, a very good way of dealing with it. I think this is a healthier, it's a better way, in my personal opinion, than the classical you hire a manager, because at least this way you're basically grooming software developers who really know the industry into becoming leaders of the company, and in turn basically managers. And I hope that this sort of trend will continue, so that we can replace the the average I don't actually know anything about software manager for people who have been like at least coding for a while, and now wants to take on a more management or leadership types of role. And as I said, there's ranges to this, guys. You don't have to give up the coding just because you go higher and higher and you need to start doing leadership. You can go all in, if you will, but you can still do these hybrid things, like me, for example, where, well, now I have like 3 different jobs. So I spend my time in a fairly equal fashion now between coding, coaching and leading, and then doing product management and things like that. So there's many combinations depending on what your needs are. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, leadership is going to be a very important factor for you when you become a more senior experience, at least if you want to get to the highest levels that you can get to within IT. More and more companies are adopting so-called career ladders, where they start off with a set of skills and areas that you need to improve in, and it's becoming more and more common that you have soft skill level types of requirements on you when you get to the higher levels. It may not be as much as a junior, but it becomes more important as the more you grow, because as I said, when you get to be really, really, really experienced, most companies who are going to compensate you want to see that grow within the overall organization. And they may not want, we may not need to turn you into a full-fledged manager, but we need to make sure that you who know so many things and so forth, that you're spreading that value around, and you have the ability to take on more than just pure coding tasks, because that is what the overall goals of the company is, to scale, if that makes sense. And it's difficult to scale if you don't have good, strong leadership within the most senior experiences. So usually people start betting on this more and more, and it is going from something that was nice to have to more and more becoming a requirement. And at least in the last few companies that I've worked in over the past few years, they've all had a career, they've all created a career ladder, and they've all had requirements for staff, engineers, seniors, and so forth on social skills, soft leadership, like initiatives and all of this sort of stuff. So I would say that it's getting to a norm at this level. Have a great day.